how light works on an object is very important. I'm going to give you, before we even draw anything, give you an actual example. This is a small eraser, also a nice piece of equipment to have. You'll notice if you look at it that there are 3 shadows. There's one here on this side, and a third one over here. Okay. The reason there are these 3 shadows is because there are actually 3 light sources in the area. Something you'll want to do when you start to work on your drawing is maybe even control where the light source is. Maybe the primary light source comes from one direction. That'll be helpful, especially when you're starting off, to get very strong shadows from one light source. Something to remember, the stronger the light, all right, the stronger the shadow. Okay, stronger light creates stronger shadows. Okay, very important to remember that. You'll notice from this one that this particular shadow is darker than all the rest. This is because this particular light source is the stronger one. It's actually above us. It's a fluorescent light, even though we're near windows. Now, if these windows were full daylight, it's the afternoon right now, but if it was, say it was early morning or whenever the sun happens to come in through these particular windows very brightly, this would be the darkest shadow. Okay? Or perhaps a combination of this one and this one, because the light shadows really do come from that way, like that. Okay. Time to sketch. All right. Now, I'd like you to reference something very quickly first. I want you to think about the moon. You know, the moon is a large, round object in the sky, and various phases of the moon happen because of the way the sun is projecting on the moon relative to the Earth. Okay, so when you see what they call, if I just quickly shade this out, this might look a little more familiar to you. The moon often looks as if it's crescent-shaped. This is because the sun is relative to the Earth's position would be coming in from this side to the moon. Okay, so here's our moon with little holes in it. Please forgive me if you happen to be an astronomer watching this. I don't mean to be inaccurate, but that's, I think, about what we need to do for that. At least I didn't draw a little spaceship hanging around the moon, because that would be really scientifically inaccurate, although not bad from an artist standpoint. Okay, so we're going to focus on different subjects today, and we're going to pick 2. I'm going to give you a hypothetical subject first, all right? And this is the really dark pencil, so we don't really want to start with that. We want to go back to our HB, all right, and do some of our drawing, all right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that the light source in this particular drawing is over here, projecting on our moon. Oops, excuse me. All right, so if the light is coming down this way, we need to figure out how it would affect this round hypothetical object. Okay. Now remember that the light is going to hit here. So if the light hits here, you're going to see shadow on what is considered the back end. Okay, very basic. You're also going to see a shadow on the subject that it rests upon. And this is going to change depending on the angle of the light and the intensity. So if the light is here, it's going to project and maybe give this sort of a shadow. If the light was moved up higher and projected more directly on it, then the shadow might be only this big. Okay. If it's a very intense light, it's going to have more of a shadow, it would be darker. And if it's a lighter light, obviously, or a less intense light, it's going to give less. Well, that's hypothetically how that would work. You'll notice, again, in a round shape like the moon, you see different objects. Now, you'll notice, by the way, that we drew it a little differently. In the first drawing, with our silly little shape, the moon was crescent-shaped, as far as what we saw, because we're assuming the light is more direct from this angle. But if the light source is more behind the object, or more directly on top of the object, rather, then you're going to see this, and that's what's going to change it. So it really depends on where your object as shadow is. Let's use a real object that's right here. This is a good one. It's an apple, in case you didn't know. Okay. Apples, by the way, make fantastic subjects for this particular case because they actually wax and dye them. Not something necessarily so good for your health, but it makes the fruit supposedly more attractive. In our case, it helps because it gives us a lot of different angles where the light might possibly be. So let's just kind of get an idea, basically, how we would shade this apple. If I was going to draw this, let's move the apple just a little closer. And this is not proportionate, by the way. The apple in this particular case I'm drawing is a little bit smaller. I'm going to put the stem, I'm going to make a whole circle right about here, all right, to represent this part here of the apple where the stem is coming out. And this is the stem. And forgive me for not having that be perfectly accurate, but it's not too bad. You know, the nice thing about art, too, is I was talking earlier about rendering an actual object. But really, when it comes down to it, I think we should learn how to do that, but many great artists have not necessarily done that. Now, Picasso is the first one that comes to mind as we sketch here a little bit, honestly, because we think that his drawing was pretty crazy. But if you look at his earlier drawings, he was actually trained, I believe, as a draftsman, or was at least pretty good about that. Okay, so there is interpretation. And again, this is a sketch. This is not a finished drawing, so it doesn't have to be perfect. You'll notice I'm doing the darker subject now. I'm starting to add, I've blocked in some of the basic lights, okay, and left quite a bit of this open space because that's where a lot of light is coming in. So I don't want to do very much with it. I want to maybe put a little mark here. Try to draw what you see, if you can possibly do it at all. Okay, so that's the basics right there. Now you'll notice, again, I've blocked in some of the light, and this is the HB pencil, so it's about midway. Now I'm going to add a little more detail. I'm going to say, all right, now I know basically where my light is. And again, I'm using light and shadow to help define the form. The only definite lines that you'll see on this drawing are the stem, and I did that so that we have a clear point of reference. And besides, the stem, you'll notice, is not very light reflective. It's got a different surface than the nice shiny skin does, so it's a little different there. I figured it was good to block that in. And the edge, obviously the contour, okay? Let's add a few more, let's add a little more darkness. As you notice, if you look here, you can see some shadow actually appearing, not very much, because the light is a little diffused. It looks great on the apple. And another thing else you notice too is, you look at the color of the apple. The color, I'm trying not to add the color in so much, or the color tones. I'm just trying to focus on what would be shadow in the area. Okay? But yeah, there's color in there too. And if we had some colored pencils, or if we were being a little more careful about color, then that might add something to the drawing. Again, you know, as you're going, I won't say there's no right or wrong in art. I'll never say that. I mean, there are some definite things that help you with your art, but we're just trying to get kind of a sketch and a rough idea. Now I'm starting to put the shadow in, you'll notice. There are different techniques you can use. This is what's called hatching. If you go like this, it kind of gives us basically, I'm keeping the shadow pretty close, all right? If you go across, notice how some of them go like this, and some of them go like this, opposite each other. That's what they call cross-hatching, and that can add darkness or a little shadow quality to it. I don't want to go too far out, though. I mean, really what I'm going to do is I did that to demonstrate it, but I think that really shouldn't be there because the actual shadow is not there. Again, I'm using shading on the object itself to help define the object, round, okay? And I'm trying to show 3 dimensions in a 2-dimensional form. So we really are leaving quite a bit of the image creation inside the viewer's mind, which is semi-constructivist theory, really, if you think about it, for education students. Okay, so what I'm doing is getting kind of a rough idea about that. Again, you can go a little bit more if you want. There's definitely a little bit of a shadow going more like that to the actual apple, so we could do that as well if we wanted to. You know, we don't need to go too crazy with it. You know, I'm going to use a really light shadow in that case to show a secondary source. Kind of gives us the idea. But again, with basic shadowing techniques, we're not going to get too nervous about it there. And there is your apple, 2D image of the apple based upon how the light is hitting the actual larger apple. And that's it. Well, thank you for coming today and watching this video. I hope it was helpful. There are a lot of good sources both online and in schools if you're more interested in focusing on drawing. I think it's a wonderful pursuit, and I wish you good luck.